She only asked for help with the zipper. But an unexpected touch ignited something irresistible. Harper Simone Lane stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her fingers gripping the stubborn zipper of her black dress. The muffled sounds of laughter and conversation filtered through the door, a reminder that beyond this moment of frustration, her colleagues were enjoying their annual summer gathering. She took a deep breath, the Atlanta heat making the small bathroom feel even more confining. "Come on," she whispered, tugging at the zipper once more. The delicate fabric caught between the metal teeth refused to budge. Harper closed her eyes, counting to 10, a habit she'd developed during particularly challenging moments in her classroom. When she opened them again, her reflection showed what she didn't want to admit. She needed help. The thought alone made her jaw clench. Harper Lane didn't ask for help. She was the one who helped others, her students, her sister, anyone who needed it. That's just who she was, who she had to be since she became responsible for raising Imani at such a young age. But the zipper remained stuck, and the clock on her phone showed she'd already spent 10 minutes in this battle. Another deep breath. Her fingers traced the "Still I Rise" tattoo on her arm, the familiar words giving her strength, even in this small moment of surrender. She cracked open the bathroom door, just enough to peek out. The hallway was mercifully empty, save for a tall figure leaning against the wall, focused on what appeared to be a message on his phone. Harper didn't recognize him, which was both a relief and a concern. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying the same authoritative tone she used to command attention in her literature classes. The man looked up, and Harper's next words caught in her throat. His eyes were an unusual shade of blue-gray, like storm clouds gathering at dusk. A slight scar cut through his right eyebrow, adding character to what was already a remarkably composed face. He straightened up immediately, tucking his phone away. "Could you?" Harper paused, reminding herself that asking for help wouldn't diminish her. "My zipper's stuck. Would you mind?" He nodded, stepping closer. "Of course." His voice was low, steady, with a hint of an accent that suggested he wasn't from Atlanta. Harper turned, exposing her back through the partially opened door. She felt his presence before his hands touched the fabric, a warmth that seemed to radiate in the space between them. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they worked with the zipper, careful not to catch her skin or the dress. "I'm Gail," he said quietly, his breath barely disturbing the air around them. "Gail Whitmore." "Harper Lane," she responded, hyper-aware of the careful movements of his hands. "I teach literature at Riverside High." The zipper finally moved, sliding smoothly up her back. His knuckles brushed against her spine, an accidental touch that sent an unexpected shiver through her body. Harper felt him pause, just for a moment, before completing the task. "Tate," he said, stepping back. Harper turned, ready to thank him, but the words shifted when she saw the expression in his eyes, a mix of professional distance and something else, something that made her heart skip a beat. "You're new here," she said instead, recognizing now that she'd never seen him at any of these gatherings before, just transferred from North Carolina. "I'm with the fire department." He absently touched the scar on his eyebrow, a gesture that seemed unconscious. "Station 23. Before Harper could respond, a familiar voice called from down the hall. "Harper, there you are." Denise Washington, her fellow English teacher, approached with 2 glasses of wine. "I've been looking everywhere for you. The new curriculum discussion is getting heated, and I need backup." Harper accepted one of the glasses, noting how Gail took a small step back, creating professional distance. "Duty calls," she said, offering him a smile. "Thank you for the help." He nodded, that same careful composure returning to his features. "Any time." As Harper followed Denise back to the main gathering, she felt his eyes on her. She didn't look back, but she could sense his presence, solid and steady, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. The party continued around her, conversations about budget cuts and standardized testing blending together. Harper participated, voiced her opinions, played her role as the dedicated teacher everyone knew her to be, but her mind kept drifting back to that moment in the hallway, the gentle touch, the careful movements, the storm cloud eyes. Her phone buzzed with a text from Imani. "Can you pick up some poster board on your way home? Last-minute project emergency." Harper smiled, typing back a quick, "Already got some in the trunk," Always prepared. Remember, the message reminded her of reality, of responsibilities. She had a sister depending on her, students who needed her focus, a life carefully built on routine and dedication. She didn't have time for distractions, no matter how intriguing they might be. Later that night, as Harper drove home through Atlanta's busy streets, she caught sight of a fire truck passing in the opposite direction, lights flashing against the darkening sky. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, and for just a moment, she allowed herself to remember the feeling of careful fingers on her back, of storm cloud eyes and a gentle voice. The moment passed. She turned up the radio, focusing on the road ahead, but something had shifted. Like a book opened to an unexpected page, a story beginning without permission. At home, Imani was sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by art supplies and reference materials. Her colorful braids were pulled up in a messy bun, and her phone was propped against a textbook, playing what sounded like a documentary. "You're late," Imani said without looking up, her hands busy with markers and paper. "Did something happen at the party?" Harper set her keys in the dish by the door, slipping off her heels. "Just the usual school politics," she answered, heading to the kitchen to start dinner. She didn't mention the stuck zipper or the firefighter with gentle hands. Some stories weren't ready to be told. But as she moved through their evening routine, helping Imani with her project, preparing for Monday's classes, reviewing her lesson plans, Harper found her mind wandering to that brief encounter. It wasn't just the physical attraction, though that was undeniable. It was something in his demeanor, in the careful way he handled both the zipper and the moment itself, that suggested depths she hadn't expected to find at a casual school function. Later, lying in bed, Harper traced the words on her arm again. "Still I rise." She'd chosen the tattoo years ago, after her first year of teaching, when the challenges of the job and raising Imani had nearly overwhelmed her. It was a reminder that strength wasn't about never needing help. It was about rising again and again no matter what life presented. She fell asleep thinking of storm clouds and gentle hands, of stories waiting to begin, of fates that sometimes turned on something as simple as a stuck zipper and a moment of surrender. Monday morning arrived with Atlanta's signature humidity and the familiar buzz of Harper's 5:30 a.m. alarm. She moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Morning meditation, shower, carefully styling her hair, selecting a forest green wrap dress that always made her feel confident on challenging days. The smell of coffee drew her to the kitchen, where she found Imani already awake, hunched over her laptop with a bowl of cereal going soggy beside her. Her sister's early presence was unusual enough to make Harper pause. "You're up early," Harper said, reaching for her favorite mug. "Everything okay?" Imani quickly minimized whatever was on her screen. "Just finishing that project. You know how Mrs. Henderson gets about deadlines." Something in Imani's tone made Harper look closer, but she held back her questions. Lately, her sister had been different, more secretive, more focused on her phone, spending hours in her room with the door closed. Harper recognized the signs of a teenager seeking independence, but it didn't make the distance any easier to accept. "I can give you a ride to school," Harper offered, buttering her toast. "Thanks, but Destiny's mom is picking me up." Imani gathered her things, stuffing them into her backpack with unusual haste. "We have morning practice for the talent showcase." Before Harper could respond, a car horn sounded outside. Imani was gone in a whirlwind of colorful braids and rushed goodbye, leaving Harper alone with her coffee and the lingering feeling that something was shifting beneath the surface of their carefully structured lives. At Riverside High, Harper's morning began with an unexpected summons to Principal Walsh's office. The secretary's careful neutrality as she delivered the message set off warning bells in Harper's mind. Principal Walsh sat behind his desk, his normally friendly demeanor replaced by something more formal. "Ms. Lane, please close the door and have a seat." Harper settled into the chair, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Through the window behind him, she could see students streaming into the building, their lives continuing normally while her world threatened to tilt. "We've received an anonymous complaint," Walsh began, his fingers drumming an irregular pattern on his desk, "regarding some of your teaching methods and content choices." The words hit Harper like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. "Could you be more specific?" Walsh shuffled through some papers. The complaint suggests that your recent unit on contemporary literature includes materials that are inappropriate for our students' age group. There are also concerns about potential bias in your grading system. Harper's mind raced through her recent lessons. She'd carefully selected texts that reflected diverse experiences while meeting all curriculum requirements. Her grading rubric was meticulously documented. "I have all my lesson plans and grading criteria documented," she said, her voice steady despite the growing knot in her stomach. "I'd be happy to review them with you." "That would be helpful." Walsh's expression softened slightly. "Harper, you know you're one of our best teachers, but we have to take these complaints seriously. For now, let's keep this between us while we investigate." Walking back to her classroom, Harper felt eyes on her. In the faculty lounge, conversations dimmed as she passed. Paranoia, she told herself, but the feeling persisted. Her first class was halfway through their discussion of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's work, when movement in the hallway caught her attention. Through the classroom window, she saw a familiar tall figure speaking with the school's facility manager. Gail Whitmore wore his firefighter uniform now, the blue material emphasizing his broad shoulders and professional bearing. He turned, catching her eye through the glass, and nodded in recognition. Harper returned the gesture before refocusing on her students, but her heartbeat had quickened. She pressed her thumb against her pen harder than necessary, leaving an indent in her skin. During her free period, curiosity drew her to the hallway. She found Gale examining the building's sprinkler system, his movements methodical and focused. "Routine inspection?" she asked, approaching. He looked up, and that same electricity from Saturday night crackled in the air between them. "Annual safety check," he answered, his voice carrying that same gentle steadiness she remembered. "How's the zipper situation?" A smile tugged at her lips despite her troubled morning. "Behaving itself, thankfully." She watched him make a note on his clipboard. "How are you finding Atlanta?" "Different from North Carolina. Bigger, faster." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Lonelier in some ways." The vulnerability in his admission caught her off guard. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Imani. "Don't wait up tonight. Study group at the library." Harper frowned at the screen. Imani's study groups usually met at their house, where Harper could keep an eye on things while grading papers or planning lessons. "Everything okay?" Gail asked, noting her expression. "Just sister stuff," Harper said, tucking her phone away. The joys of raising a teenager. Understanding flickered in his eyes. "You raise her alone. Since our parents—" Harper stopped herself. This wasn't the time or place for that story. "Yes, it's just us." Gail nodded, his hand unconsciously moving to touch something under his uniform shirt, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a tell for when something touched a nerve. The bell rang, shattering the moment. Students began flooding the hallway, their energy and noise creating a barrier between the two adults. "I should get back," Harper said, already stepping away. "Nice seeing you again." "Harper," Gail called after her, making her pause. "If you ever want to talk about sister stuff or anything else." He left the offer hanging, neither pushing nor retreating. She smiled, a small, genuine thing. "I'll keep that in mind." Back in her classroom, Harper tried to focus on grading papers, but her mind kept wandering. The anonymous complaint loomed over her like a storm cloud, threatening everything she'd worked for. Imani's secretive behavior nagged at her instincts, and now there was Gale, with his careful offers of support and eyes that seemed to see more than she was ready to show. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an email from Principal Walsh requesting her complete lesson plans and grading records for the past semester. Harper's fingers tightened around her pen until her knuckles went white. Outside her window, she saw Gale loading his equipment back into the fire truck. He paused, looking up at the school building with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between concern and recognition, as if he too knew what it was like to have your professional world threatened by things beyond your control. The day continued, but everything felt slightly off-kilter. In her last class, Harper noticed one of her students, Miguel, watching her with unusual intensity. When the bell rang, he lingered behind, shuffling his feet. "Ms. Lane?" he said, approaching her desk. I wanted to say your class is the only one where I feel like I can really be myself, where What I think actually matters." The simple honesty of his words nearly broke her composure. "Thank you, Miguel. That means a lot." After he left, Harper sat alone in her classroom, watching the afternoon light paint shadows on the walls. She thought about Miguel's words, about Imani's secrets, about Gail's offer of support, about how sometimes the biggest fires in our lives start with the smallest sparks. Her phone lit up with another text from Imani. "Don't forget I'm at the library. Love you." Harper stared at the message, noting the unusual addition of "love you." Imani hadn't ended a text that way since middle school. Something was definitely changing, and Harper wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever flames were about to rise. The library's closing announcement echoed through the nearly empty building, but Imani remained focused on her laptop screen, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The application essay prompt stared back at her. "Describe a challenge that shaped who you are today." She glanced at the time, 8:55 p.m. Harper would be worried, even though Imani had texted about staying late. The thought of her sister made Imani's stomach twist with guilt. "How do you tell someone who sacrificed everything for you that you're planning to leave?" The screen blurred as tears threatened to fall. Imani quickly saved her work and packed up, pulling her hoodie close as she stepped into the Atlanta night. The humidity wrapped around her like a blanket, heavy with unspoken words. Across town, Harper sat in her classroom, surrounded by stacks of documentation. Her lesson plans, grading rubrics, and student feedback forms created a paper fortress around her desk. The anonymous complaint had evolved into a formal review, and tomorrow she would face the first meeting with the academic board. A knock on her doorframe made her look up. Gail stood there, still in uniform, holding 2 coffee cups. "You're here late?" he said, stepping inside. "Thought you might need this." Harper accepted the coffee, noting how he'd remembered her mention of preferring it black. "How did you know I was still here?" "Saw your car in the lot during our evening patrol." He pulled up a student chair, looking somewhat too large for it. "Want to talk about it?" Harper took a sip, letting the warmth spread through her chest. "Someone filed a complaint about my teaching methods. They're saying I'm pushing a personal agenda, that my content choices are inappropriate." She gestured at the papers surrounding her. "Now I have to justify every decision I've made this year." Gail's expression darkened. "That's why you've been staying late all week." She nodded, surprised he'd noticed. "I can't lose this job. It's not just about me. Imani's college applications are coming up, and..." She stopped, realizing she was revealing too much. "So, and you carry it all alone," he finished quietly. Their eyes met across the desk, and Harper felt that now familiar current of understanding pass between them. Gail reached for one of the papers, a lesson plan about contemporary literature's role in social dialogue. "This is good work," he said after reading it. "Your students are lucky to have someone who makes them think. Sometimes thinking is what gets you in trouble." Harper's voice carried a bitterness she usually kept hidden, "especially when you encourage others to do it too." Gail's hand moved to his chest, to that spot he often touched when something hit close to home. This time, Harper decided to ask, "What's there?" "Under your uniform." He stilled, and for a moment she thought she'd crossed a line. Then, slowly, he pulled down his collar just enough to reveal the edge of a tattoo, numbers in a simple font, a date. "The night I lost my partner," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were responding to a warehouse fire. I was lead, made the call to go in." He let the collar snap back into place. The floor collapsed. "I made it out." He didn't. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with shared understanding of what it meant to carry responsibility for others. "How do you do it?" Harper asked. "Go back in after something like that. Same way you walk into this classroom every day, knowing someone's trying to tear you down." His eyes held hers. "Because someone else might need you to." The moment was interrupted by Harper's phone buzzing. Another text from Imani. "Almost home. Made great progress on the project." Harper frowned at the message. Imani had been mentioning this mysterious project for weeks now, but something about it didn't add up. "Sister stuff again?" Gail asked. "She's hiding something, I can feel it." Harper began gathering her papers. "I should get home." Gail stood, his height more apparent now. "Let me help you carry these to your car." "I can manage," Harper started automatically, then stopped herself. "Actually, yes. Thank you." They walked through the empty halls together, their footsteps echoing in the silence. At her car, as they loaded the boxes into her trunk, their hands brushed. The contact was brief but electric, sending warmth up Harper's arm. "Harper," Gail said as she closed the trunk, "whatever happens with this review, you're not alone in this." She wanted to respond, to acknowledge what was growing between them, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded and got into her car, watching in her rearview mirror as his figure grew smaller. At home, she found Imani asleep on the couch, her laptop still open beside her. Harper gently closed it, noticing a minimized window labeled "College Essay Draft." Her heart clenched, but she resisted the urge to look. Trust, she reminded herself, went both ways. She covered Imani with a blanket, remembering all the nights she'd done this when her sister was younger. Back then, the challenges had seemed simpler. Homework help, scraped knees, nightmare comfort. Now they were both navigating waters that felt deeper, darker, filled with secrets they weren't ready to share. In her room, Harper changed into her nightclothes, her fingers lingering on the zipper of her dress. She thought of Gail's revelation, of the weight he carried beneath his uniform, of how sometimes the bravest thing isn't facing the flames alone, but letting someone else stand beside you as they burn. Her phone lit up with a message from Principal Walsh. Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. Full review of materials required. Harper's hand tightened around the phone. In the living room, she heard Imani stir, mumbling something in her sleep. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, and she wondered if Gail was out there, facing his own fires. She set the phone down and opened her laptop, ready to review her documentation one more time. On her arm, Maya Angelou's words seemed to glow in the dim light. "Still I rise." Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but for now, she let herself remember the feeling of Gail's hand brushing hers, of strength shared rather than surrendered. The night stretched ahead, full of papers to review and words to defend. But something had shifted in Harper's world. A recognition that perhaps the real strength wasn't in standing alone, but in knowing when to let someone catch you if you fall. The academic board meeting left Harper feeling hollowed out. She sat in her car in the school parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, replaying every moment of the 2-hour interrogation. They'd questioned everything: her choice of texts, her discussion topics, her grading methods. Even her subtle encouragement of student debates had been scrutinized as potentially inflammatory. Principal Walsh had remained neutral, his face a practiced mask of administrative concern, but it was the presence of Laurel Matthews, the district supervisor, that had turned the meeting from review to inquisition. "We're concerned," Matthews had said, her voice precise as a scalpel, "about reports of students feeling uncomfortable with certain discussions in your classroom." Harper had maintained her composure, presenting her documentation with professional calm, but inside, each question had felt like another brick added to a wall being built between her and her passion for teaching. A tap on her window startled her from the memory. Gail stood there, concern evident in his storm cloud eyes. She lowered the window, trying to summon a smile she didn't feel. "That bad?" he asked. Harper let out a shaky breath. "They're talking about temporary reassignment, pending the investigation." "Come on," he said after a moment. "You need coffee, real coffee, not the break room stuff." She should say no, should go home, review her notes, prepare for tomorrow's classes while she still had them. Instead, she found herself nodding. They ended up at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the school, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop. The place was quiet, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Harper sank into a worn leather armchair, letting the atmosphere wash over her. "How do you know about this place?" she asked, as Gail returned with their drinks. "Found it my first week here. Reminded me of a place back home." He settled into the chair opposite her, his uniform drawing curious glances from other patrons. "I want to talk about what really happened in there." Harper wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "They're not just questioning my methods, they're questioning my judgment, my integrity." She took a sip, letting the rich flavor ground her. One parent complained that their child came home asking uncomfortable questions after we discussed systemic inequalities in literature. "Isn't that the point?" Gail leaned forward. "To make them think." Apparently not everyone wants their children thinking too deeply. She set her mug down harder than intended. 17 years of straight-A students going to top colleges, and one anonymous complaint has them treating me like I'm... Her voice caught. Gail's hand moved toward hers on the table, stopping just short of touching. Like you're what? Dangerous. The word came out barely above a whisper. Like I'm some kind of threat they need to contain. Understanding darkened his expression. He touched his chest again, where she now knew the date of his loss was inked into his skin. I know something about being seen as a threat. After the accident, they called me reckless, said I was too willing to take risks. Were you? No. His voice carried years of contained pain. I was doing my job, trying to save lives. But once people decide you're dangerous, he trailed off, his meaning clear. Harper's phone buzzed with a text from Imani, going to Destiny's after school, working on college stuff. The casual admission made Harper freeze. College stuff, she whispered, staring at the screen. Gail noticed her distress. What is it? Imani she's never mentioned college applications before. Not directly. Harper showed him the text. Sounds she's been so secretive lately. And now this. Maybe she's afraid of disappointing you, he suggested gently. But why would she? Harper stopped. Recognition hitting her. Oh God, she's applying out of state, isn't she? That's why she's been hiding it. The realization brought a flood of emotions. Pride, fear, hurt, and a deep, aching sadness. Her baby sister, preparing to leave. Another piece of her carefully constructed world threatening to slip away. Hey! Gail's voice pulled her back. This time his hand did cover hers, warm and steady. Breathe. Harper hadn't realized she was close to tears until that moment. The warmth of his touch anchored her, providing a point of focus beyond the swirling chaos of her thoughts. Everything's falling apart, she admitted. My job, my relationship with Imani. No, he said firmly. Everything's changing. There's a difference. She looked at their joined hands, at how naturally they fit together. When did you get so wise? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Probably around the same time I learned that fighting fires means knowing which ones to put out and which ones need to burn. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. Some changes, like some fires, were necessary for growth. The thought brought both comfort and fear. They sat in comfortable silence, their hands still connected, as the afternoon light painted shadows through the coffee shop's windows. Outside, Atlanta continued its busy pace, but in here, time seemed to slow. I should get back, Harper said eventually, though she made no move to leave. I have papers to grade. Let me drive you to your car, Gail offered. When she started to protest, he added, please. It's what partners do. The word partners hung between them, carrying weight beyond its immediate context. Harper found herself nodding, accepting both the ride and what it represented. As they walked back to his truck, their shoulders occasionally brushing, Harper thought about trust falls, those team-building exercises where you have to let yourself fall backward, trusting someone to catch you. She'd always hated them, preferring to be the catcher rather than the one falling, but maybe that was the lesson in all of this. Sometimes strength meant letting yourself fall. Sometimes trust meant showing your fears instead of hiding them. Back at her car, Harper turned to thank him. The words died in her throat as she found him much closer than expected, his presence solid and real in the fading daylight. Harper, he said, her name carrying questions he didn't voice. Before either of them could move, a fire truck's siren blared to life at the station. Gail stepped back, professional duty reasserting itself in his posture. Be safe, she said, understanding in her bones what that prayer meant to people like them, people responsible for others, lives and futures. He nodded once, then jogged toward his truck. Harper watched him go, feeling the phantom warmth of his hand still on hers. At home, she found a college brochure partially hidden under Imani's bed while putting away laundry. The school was in California, about as far from Atlanta as her sister could get. Harper sat on the edge of the bed, holding the glossy paper, and let herself feel everything she'd been trying to control. Sometimes the most dangerous fires were the ones you couldn't see coming, the ones that started in your own heart, burning away the walls you'd built to keep yourself safe. The school hallway felt different at dawn. Harper walked through the empty corridor, her heels echoing against the linoleum, morning light casting long shadows through the windows. She'd arrived early to find a bright yellow envelope on her desk, its presence like a warning sign. Inside, she found what she'd been dreading, official notice of her temporary suspension from teaching duties, effective immediately. The words pending investigation and administrative leave blurred before her eyes. Her fingers found her phone without conscious thought, hovering over Gail's name in her contacts. He'd given her his number, just in case. After their coffee shop conversation, she hadn't used it yet, holding onto that last barrier between professional acquaintance and something more. The sound of approaching footsteps made her quickly pocket both phone and letter. Principal Walsh appeared in her doorway, his expression grave. "Harper," he said, "I tried to call you. I got the letter." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "May I at least say goodbye to my students?" Walsh's discomfort was visible. "The board thinks it's best if—" "If what?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "If I disappear, like I did something wrong." "It's temporary," he offered weakly. "Just until we sort this out." Harper looked around her classroom, at the posters of diverse authors on the walls, the student projects displayed with pride, the careful notes on her whiteboard about tomorrow's lesson that she wouldn't be teaching. "Who filed the complaint?" she asked, though she knew he couldn't tell her. "Don't I have the right to face my accuser?" "Harper, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." She wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand justice. Instead, she gathered her personal items with precise movements, her hands shaking only slightly as she placed Maya Angelou's collected works in her bag. The drive home was a blur. She found herself parking at the coffee shop instead of her house, needing somewhere neutral to process what had just happened. The morning rush hadn't started yet, and the place was empty except for a familiar figure in the corner. Gail looked up as she approached, his expression changing instantly at the sight of her face. "What happened?" "They suspended me." The words came out raw, unfiltered. "Effective immediately. I can't even say goodbye to my students." He stood, coffee forgotten. "Sit. I'm getting you something stronger than coffee." "It's 7 a.m., she protested weakly. "I meant hot chocolate, with extra marshmallows." The small attempt at comfort broke something in her. Tears she'd been holding back since reading the letter finally spilled over. Gail moved instinctively, pulling her into his arms right there in the middle of the coffee shop. She should have felt embarrassed, crying against the shoulder of a man she barely knew. Instead, she felt safe for the first time since this nightmare began. His arms were strong around her, one hand making soothing circles on her back. "I've got you," he murmured. "Let it out." They stayed like that until her tears subsided. When she finally pulled back, his uniform was wet where her face had been. "I ruined your shirt." "I've got spare uniforms at the station." His eyes searched her face. "Want to talk about it?" Before she could answer, her phone rang. Imani's face lit up the screen. Harper took a steadying breath before answering. "Hey, sweetie. Where are you?" Imani's voice was tight with worry. "I came down for breakfast and you weren't here." "You're never not here in the morning." The concern in her sister's voice threatened to start the tears again. "I had to go in early. Listen, when you get home from school today, we need to talk." A pause. "About what?" "About California," Harper said softly. "And whatever else you've been afraid to tell me." The silence on the other end stretched out. "Finally," Imani whispered, "how did you know?" "We'll talk tonight. I love you." After hanging up, Harper found Gail watching her with understanding. "The college brochure?" She nodded. "Among other clues. I've been so caught up in this investigation. I almost missed seeing how much she's been struggling too. Sounds like you both have some truths to share," he said, then hesitated before adding, "Speaking of truths, there's something you should know." The tone of his voice made her stomach clench. "What is it?" He pulled out his phone, showing her a news article from North Carolina. The headline read, "Fatal Fire Investigation Reveals Systemic Safety Violations." Below was a picture of a younger Gail, looking shell-shocked outside a burning warehouse. "The partner I lost," he said, his voice rough. "It wasn't just an accident. I'd reported safety violations in that building 3 times. Management covered it up. When the floor collapsed..." He stopped, his hand moving to his chest, where she knew the date was tattooed. "I was transferred here because I wouldn't stop pushing for an investigation. They said I was unmanageable." Understanding dawned. You know what it's like to stand up for what's right and be punished for it. That's why I wanted you to know." His eyes held hers. "Sometimes the system tries to break you for telling the truth, but the truth matters more than the system." Harper's phone buzzed with a text from Miguel, her student. "Ms. Lane, they won't tell us what happened. Are you okay?" More texts followed from other students, their concern and confusion clear in every message. One caught her eye. "Remember what you taught us about speaking up. We're not letting this happen." "My students," she said, showing Gail the messages. "They're worried. They should be. You're the kind of teacher who changes lives." He took her hand, his grip firm. "And I think it's time we fought back. We, partners, remember." The word carried even more weight now. "I know something about investigating injustice. Let me help." Looking at their joined hands, Harper thought about all the walls she'd built over the years. Walls to protect herself, to stay strong for Imani, to keep her professional life pristine. Now those walls were crumbling, but instead of feeling exposed, she felt supported. "Okay," she said finally. "Where do we start?" "First, you go home and have that talk with your sister. Real change starts with truth." He squeezed her hand. "Then, tomorrow, we start digging. Someone filed that complaint for a reason, and I bet it wasn't about literature." As if on cue, Harper's phone lit up with an email from Laurel Matthews. "Emergency board meeting scheduled for Friday. New concerns have been raised." "Friday," Harper said, her voice growing stronger. "That gives us 3 days." Gail stood, helping her up. 3 days to uncover the truth, support your sister's dreams, and maybe," he smiled slightly, "figure out what this is between us." For the first time since finding the yellow envelope, Harper felt something like hope. She'd spent so long being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never needed help. But maybe real strength was knowing when to let others in, when to let the walls burn down so something better could rise from the ashes. 3 days, she agreed, holding his gaze. "Let's make them count." The smell of smoke reached Harper before the alarms began to wail. She'd been sitting in her car in the school parking lot, gathering courage for the board meeting, when she noticed the thin grey wisps curling from beneath the gymnasium doors. Her suspension didn't matter anymore. She was out of her car and running toward the building before conscious thought took over. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as students began streaming out of the emergency exits, their confused voices rising in volume as the situation became clear. Inside, the halls were filling with smoke. Harper moved against the flow of evacuating students, checking classrooms and bathrooms. The smoke was thicker near the gym, where she knew the early morning basketball practice would be happening. "Ms. Lane," Miguel's voice cut through the chaos. He was helping a limping freshman toward the exit. Coach Wilson still checking the locker rooms. The smoke was becoming dense, making her eyes water. Through the haze, she saw Imani's friend Destiny stumbling out of the gym doors, coughing. Harper's heart stopped. Imani had mentioned morning practice. "Destiny!" Harper grabbed the girl's shoulders. "Where's Imani?" "She went back in," Destiny choked out between coughs. "Someone said, their phone." Harper didn't wait to hear more. She pulled her shirt over her nose and pushed through the gym doors. The smoke was a living thing here, thick and angry. The heat pressed against her skin as she moved deeper into the space. "Imani!" Her voice was lost in the roar of the growing fire. Emergency lights pulsed through the smoke like distant lighthouses. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Harper, get out of here." Gale emerged from the smoke like an apparition, his firefighting gear making him seem larger than life. His eyes widened with recognition behind his mask. "Imani," she coughed out. "My sister, we've got her," he said, gripping her arm. "She's already outside. Now move." The ceiling groaned above them. Gale's training took over. He practically lifted Harper off her feet, propelling her toward the exit as pieces of the roof began to fall. They burst into the morning air together, Harper gasping and coughing as Gale guided her to the waiting EMTs. Through streaming eyes, she saw Imani running toward her. "Harper!" Her sister crashed into her, trembling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to get Destiny's phone. It had all her college photos and—" "Don't you ever," Harper choked out, holding her sister tight, "ever do that again." Over Imani's shoulder, Harper watched Gale directing his team back into the building. He paused for just a moment, their eyes meeting. She saw the fear there, the same fear she'd seen in his expression when he'd told her about his lost partner. The next hours passed in a blur of sirens, questions, and oxygen masks. The fire was contained to the gymnasium, but the smoke damage extended through much of the school's east wing. Harper sat on the back of an ambulance, watching officials and firefighters move through the organized chaos. Principal Walsh found her there. He looked shaken, his usual administrative polish cracked. "You went back in," he said, his voice carrying an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Against policy, against your suspension, you went back in to help. They're my students," she said simply. "Suspension doesn't change that." He nodded slowly. "No, I suppose it doesn't." He handed her a folder. "The complaint investigation. Someone came forward this morning. Apparently, Mrs. Matthews has a history of targeting teachers who don't align with her. Personal views." Harper's hands shook as she opened the folder, but before she could read its contents, she saw Gale emerging from the building one last time. His team had finished their final sweep. He removed his helmet, and even from a distance, she could see the mixture of relief and residual fear in his posture. "Excuse me," she said to Walsh, standing on unsteady legs. She met Gale halfway across the parking lot. He was streaked with soot, his uniform bearing witness to the battle he'd just fought. Without words, he pulled her into his arms, not caring who saw. "Don't ever," he breathed against her hair, "run into a burning building again. That's my job." "Like you said," she whispered back, "it's what partners do." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his eyes intense. "I can't lose anyone else to fire, especially not you." The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning. Before either could speak further, Imani approached, her expression a mixture of guilt and determination. "I need to tell you both something," she said. "I got accepted. Full scholarship to film school in California." She took a shaky breath. "I was going to tell you tonight, but after today, I don't want to wait to be honest anymore." Harper looked at her sister, really looked at her. Gone was the little girl who needed protection. In her place stood a young woman ready to chase her dreams, even if those dreams led her across the country. "I'm so proud of you," Harper said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Terrified, but proud. Gale's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Sometimes the scariest changes bring the best beginnings. Around them, the school parking lot was beginning to clear. The morning sun had risen fully, painting the smoke-stained buildings in stark relief. Students huddled in groups, sharing videos of the fire on their phones. Teachers consoled shaken kids and took attendance. Looking at the scene, Harper felt a shift in her universe. The carefully constructed walls she'd built, between her personal and professional life, between strength and vulnerability, between self-sufficiency and accepting help, had burned away in the morning's fire. "The board meeting," she remembered suddenly. "It's still scheduled for—" "Is cancelled," Walsh called out, approaching their small group. "Given today's events and the new information about Miss Matthews, we'll be conducting a different kind of review." He looked meaningfully at Harper, one focused on commending teachers who put their students first, regardless of personal cost. Imani hugged her sister again, whispering, "See, sometimes good things come from scary moments." Harper looked at Gale, who hadn't let go of her hand. His eyes held the same understanding they'd shared in the coffee shop, the same strength she'd felt in his arms during her darkest moment. "Yeah," she said softly, squeezing his hand, "they really do." The morning's events had changed everything and nothing. There would still be challenges to face: Imani's departure, rebuilding from the fire, navigating whatever was growing between her and Gale. But for the first time in years, Harper didn't feel the need to face those challenges alone. Sometimes it took a fire to show you what could survive the flames. Sometimes it took nearly losing everything to understand what you couldn't bear to lose. And sometimes, in the aftermath of the blaze, you found yourself holding on to exactly what you needed all along. The fire investigation team moved through the charred gymnasium with methodical precision. Harper watched from the doorway as Gale knelt beside a blackened electrical panel, his expression focused as he documented the damage. The morning sun streamed through the smoke-stained windows, highlighting the destruction that could have been so much worse. "Oh, so the fire started here," he explained, gesturing her closer. Faulty wiring that should have been replaced months ago. The inspection report I filed last week flagged it as a hazard. Harper remembered their conversation about the warehouse fire in North Carolina, about systems failing the people they were meant to protect. Another cover-up. Not this time. Gale stood, brushing ash from his uniform. Walsh found the maintenance request buried in Matthew's office. She'd been sitting on facility repairs to cut costs. The revelations settled like lead in Harper's stomach. She wasn't just targeting teachers, she was endangering students. The district superintendent is already involved. Matthews won't be able to sweep this under the rug. He touched her arm gently. "How are you holding up?" Harper leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The past 24 hours felt like a lifetime. "I haven't slept. After the fire, after Imani's news." She trailed off, remembering the scholarship letter now hanging on their refrigerator. "I keep thinking about all the ways things could have gone wrong. But they didn't." His voice was soft but firm. Everyone made it out. The truth came out. Sometimes good things rise from the ashes. "You sound like a fortune cookie," she teased, but her smile was genuine. "Speaking of fortune," he hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his pocket. "The investigation team found this in the locker room. It survived the fire." Harper recognized Imani's handwriting immediately. The envelope was addressed to her, slightly singed around the edges but intact. "I'll give you some privacy," Gale said, squeezing her shoulder before walking away. Harper waited until his footsteps faded before opening the letter. Inside, she found pages of Imani's distinctive script. "Dear Harper, I've tried to tell you this in person so many times, but I always lose my courage. How do you tell the person who gave up everything for you that you need to leave, that your dreams are calling you across the country? You've been my mother, my father, my sister, my best friend. You put your life on hold to raise me, to give me every opportunity. I used to think I had to stay close to repay that debt. But yesterday in your classroom I watched you teach. You talked about how love means wanting someone to become their best self, even if that self takes them far away. I realized you weren't just teaching literature. You were teaching me how to be brave. The scholarship to film school in California. It's not just about making movies. It's about telling stories that matter. Stories about family, about sacrifice, about love that's strong enough to let go. Stories like ours. I'm not running away from you. I'm running toward the person you raised me to be, and I promise wherever I go, I'll always come home to you. Love, Imani P. S. I see how Officer Gale looks at you. Maybe it's time for you to be brave too." Harper pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling freely now. She didn't hear Gale return until he spoke. "I brought you something else." He held out a familiar book, her copy of Maya Angelou's works, rescued from her classroom. "Thought you might need this today." She took the book, running her fingers over the worn cover. "How do you always know exactly what I need?" "Practice." He smiled slightly. "Firefighters learn to read smoke, to understand what a fire needs. People aren't so different. And what do you see when you read me?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Gale stepped closer, his hand coming up to brush away a tear from her cheek. "I see someone who spent so long being strong for others, she forgot she's allowed to need something for herself." His touch lingered. "I see someone who fights for truth, even when it costs her everything. Someone who runs into fires to protect what she loves. That sounds reckless," she whispered. "That sounds like someone I understand." His other hand found hers, entwining their fingers. "Someone I can't stop thinking about." Harper looked down at their joined hands, at how naturally they fit together. "I'm not good at this, at letting someone else be strong for me." "I know." His thumb traced patterns on her palm. "But maybe that's what makes us work. We both know what it's like to carry too much alone." A noise from the hallway made them step apart. Principal Walsh appeared, looking apologetic for the interruption. "Harper, the superintendent would like to speak with you about reinstating your position and," he smiled slightly, "a possible promotion to department head." "I'll be right there." She turned back to Gale. "Will you come by later?" "There's something I need to tell you too." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'll bring dinner. That little Italian place you mentioned." "Perfect." She squeezed his hand once more before letting go. Walking through the damaged hallway toward Walsh's office, Harper felt lighter despite the destruction around her. Imani's letter sat close to her heart, its words echoing with truth. It was time to be brave in a different way. In her classroom, now aired out but still smelling of smoke, she paused to look at the Maya Angelou quote she'd painted on the wall her first year teaching. "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Today, she would tell her story to the superintendent about her vision for teaching truth despite resistance, to Imani about how proud she was of her sister's courage, and to Gail about how sometimes the scariest fires are the ones that burn in your own heart, waiting to be acknowledged. The morning sun streamed through her classroom windows, catching the particles of ash still floating in the air. In the light, they looked less like the remnants of destruction and more like stars, each one carrying the promise of something new waiting to begin. The superintendent's office felt worlds away from Harper's classroom. Sitting across from Dr. Andrea Reynolds, Harper watched the older woman review the evidence against Matthews with growing concern. Ignored maintenance requests, targeted investigations of our most effective teachers, discriminatory practices. Dr. Reynolds set down the file with a controlled fury. "Miss Lane, I owe you an apology on behalf of the district. I'm more concerned about the students," Harper said. "The fire could have—" "But it didn't," Dr. Reynolds interrupted gently. "Thanks in part to your actions, which brings me to why you're here." She pulled out a new folder. "We're creating a position for diversity and innovation in literature education, department head, with the freedom to develop curriculum across the district." Harper's breath caught. "You want me to lead the department? Yes, your teaching methods, the ones Matthews tried to suppress, they're exactly what our students need." Dr. Reynolds leaned forward. "Think about it. You could help other teachers create the kind of inclusive, thought-provoking environment you've built in your classroom." The opportunity was everything Harper had dreamed of, but never dared pursue, yet something held her back. "I need time to consider it." "Of course." Dr. Reynolds smiled knowingly. "Take the weekend. Though I suspect your hesitation has less to do with the job and more to do with a certain firefighter I saw you with yesterday." Heat rose to Harper's cheeks. "It's complicated. The best things usually are." Dr. Reynolds stood, ending their meeting. "Just remember, Miss Lane, sometimes life offers us multiple dreams at once. The trick is learning we don't have to choose between them." Outside the office, Harper found Imani waiting, her sister's expression a mix of excitement and nerves. "Well, did you get it? How did you know about the position?" "Please." Imani rolled her eyes. "The whole school's talking about it. You're basically famous now. The teacher who fought back and won." She linked her arm through Harper's. "So, did you say yes?" "I'm thinking about it." They walked together toward the parking lot. "Speaking of big decisions, we need to talk about California." Imani tensed beside her. "I know it's far, but nothing." Harper stopped, turning to face her sister. "I read your letter, the one that survived the fire." "Oh," Imani's voice was small. "I wasn't sure if I'd understand." Harper pulled her sister into a hug. "Baby girl, I've watched you grow into this amazing, passionate young woman. Of course you need to spread your wings. Of course you need to tell your stories." Imani's arms tightened around her. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not of going, but of leaving you alone." "I won't be alone." The words came naturally now. "I'm learning that being strong doesn't mean being solitary." As if summoned by her words, a familiar fire truck pulled into the parking lot. Gail stepped out, still in uniform, carrying what looked like building plans. "Speaking of not being alone," Imani teased, wiping away tears, "your firefighter's here." "He's not my—" Harper stopped, realizing how futile the denial was. "Go on, I'll see you at home." Imani gave her a knowing look before heading to her friend's waiting car. "Don't forget we're looking at dorm stuff online tonight." Harper watched her sister leave, marveling at how their relationship was evolving from guardian and ward to something deeper, something built on mutual understanding and respect. "You look happy," Gail said, approaching. "Good meeting with the superintendent." "Very good." She nodded at the plans he carried. "What's all this?" "Renovation proposals for the gym." He fell into step beside her as they walked toward the damaged building. "I want to make sure it's done right this time. No cutting corners, no ignored safety measures." Inside the gym, afternoon light streamed through the damaged roof, creating patterns on the floor like stained glass. Gail spread the plans on a makeshift table, but instead of explaining them, he turned to her with unexpected intensity. "I need to tell you something." His hand moved to his chest, to the tattooed date she knew lay beneath his uniform. "I'm having it removed. The date." Harper's breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I talked to my old partner's wife yesterday. Told her about you, about how you ran into the fire to protect your students." His voice grew rough. "She said Tom would have done the same thing. That carrying his death date wasn't honoring his memory. Living like he lived would be—" Without thinking, Harper reached up to touch his face, her fingers brushing the scar on his eyebrow. And how did he live? Bravely, openly. Gail caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek. He wasn't afraid to love deeply, even knowing the risks. The word love hung between them, electric and real. Harper thought about Dr. Reynolds' words about multiple dreams, about Imani's letter urging her to be brave. "I'm being offered the department head position," she said softly. "District-wide curriculum development, chances to make real change." "That's amazing." His smile was genuine, proud. "You deserve it." "It would mean staying in Atlanta." She met his eyes. "Making a life here." Understanding dawned in his expression. "While Imani goes to California—" "Yeah." Harper let out a shaky breath. "I'm learning that maybe home isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about building something new while loving what changes." Gail pulled her closer, one hand sliding to the small of her back. "I know something about building things that last." "Do you?" Her heart was racing now, but her voice was steady. "Prove it." His kiss was everything she'd imagined, and nothing like she'd expected. It was gentle but sure, like his hands had been that first night with the zipper. It was heat without burning, strength without domination. It was coming home to a place she hadn't known she was looking for. When they finally parted, Harper rested her forehead against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "We should probably look at those renovation plans." "Probably," his laugh rumbled under her ear, "but I'm thinking maybe we could look at them over dinner instead. I know this great Italian place. The one you promised to take me to last night." "Exactly." He stepped back just enough to see her face. "What do you say, partner? Ready to start rebuilding?" Harper looked around the damaged gym, at the plans for its resurrection, at the man who understood both destruction and renewal. "Yes," she said simply. "I think I am." They left the gym together, his hand warm in hers. Outside, the Atlanta afternoon was fading into evening. The sky painted in colors that reminded Harper of fire, not the destructive kind, but the kind that lights the way home. The acceptance ceremony for Imani's scholarship was being held over video conference, a concession to the gym fire that had closed parts of the school. Harper sat beside her sister in their living room, both dressed up despite the virtual nature of the event. Imani's hands fidgeted with her braids, a nervous habit Harper recognized from years of school presentations. "What if I freeze up?" Imani whispered, as they waited for the call to connect. "What if I say something wrong, and they change their minds?" Harper caught her sister's restless hands. "Hey, look at me." She waited until Imani met her eyes. "You got this scholarship because they saw what I've always seen, a brilliant young woman with stories that need to be told. Just be yourself." "Mrs. Lane is right," came Gail's voice from the kitchen, where he was setting up the celebration dinner he'd brought. "Though I'd argue, you got your speaking skills from her." The past few weeks had seen Gail's presence in their home become increasingly natural. He'd helped Imani research California housing options, contributed to Harper's curriculum proposals, and somehow always seemed to know when either sister needed quiet support or a gentle push forward. The computer chimed, and suddenly their screen filled with faces, the scholarship committee, other recipients, proud families. Harper squeezed Imani's hand one last time before letting go. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of speeches and congratulations. But when it was Imani's turn to speak, Harper felt tears spring to her eyes. Her sister's voice was clear and confident as she talked about storytelling as a bridge between communities, about the power of film to make invisible stories visible. "I learned from my sister," Imani said, her voice carrying emotion but no shake, "that the most important stories are often the ones that scare us to tell. The ones about love, about change, and about letting go so something new can grow." After the ceremony ended and the screen went dark, Imani threw herself into Harper's arms. "We did it." "No," Harper said firmly, holding her sister tight. "You did it. This is all you." "Well," Imani pulled back with a mischievous smile, "maybe not all me. Pretty sure having a local hero for a sister helped my application." "Local hero?" Harper scoffed, but Gail's laugh from the doorway made her turn. "Have you seen the district newsletter?" He held up his phone, showing an article with the headline, "Innovation in Education. Harper Lane appointed to lead new diversity initiative. They're calling you the teacher who fought the system and won," Imani said proudly. "Gao, the one who wouldn't back down." "Speaking of not backing down," Gail set his phone aside, his expression growing serious. "I have something to show you both." He unbuttoned the top of his uniform shirt, revealing his chest where the date of his partner's death had been. In its place was fresh ink, still slightly red around the edges, a rising phoenix, its wings spreading across his heart. "The date was about guilt," he explained, touching the new tattoo gently. "Now this is about rising from ashes, about honoring the past by living fully in the present." Harper reached out, her fingers hovering over the design. "When did you—" "Yesterday. I wanted to wait until after the ceremony to show you." His eyes met hers. "New beginnings deserve new symbols." Imani cleared her throat dramatically. "And that's my cue to go call Destiny about dorm arrangements." She hugged them both quickly. "Don't let the food get cold." Once they were alone, Harper let her hand rest fully on Gail's chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath the phoenix's wings. "It's beautiful. It's not the only change I'm making." He covered her hand with his. "I put in for a permanent transfer to Station 23. No more temporary assignment." The implications of his words made Harper's breath catch. "You're staying?" "I'm staying," he smiled softly. "So it turns out I found something worth building a life around." "Just something," she teased, though her heart was racing. Instead of answering, he kissed her. It was different from their first kiss in the gym, less urgent, more certain, a kiss that spoke of mornings and evenings, of shared meals and quiet moments, of a future unfolding one day at a time. The sound of Imani's delighted squeal broke them apart. "Finally. Does this mean Gail's officially joining our Sunday movie nights?" "It means," Harper said, not looking away from Gail's eyes, "that we're all figuring out what family looks like now." Speaking of family, Gail reached into his pocket, pulling out an envelope. "This came to the station for you." Harper opened it to find official letterhead from her new department, approving her first proposed curriculum change, a unit on literature of resistance and renewal, focusing on voices that rose above silence to tell necessary truths. "They approved it." Imani peered over her shoulder. "See, the system can change. With the right people pushing for change," Gail added, his arm sliding around Harper's waist. Harper looked at the approval letter, at her sister's bright future, at the man who'd helped her remember that strength could mean letting others in. 3 months ago, she'd been a teacher afraid of losing control. Now she was something more, a woman who'd learned that the most powerful stories were the ones you were brave enough to live. "Come on," she said, tucking the letter away. "Let's eat before everything gets cold." They gathered around the dinner table, the three of them falling into easy conversation about California plans and curriculum ideas and station life. Through the window, Harper could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening Atlanta sky. Each one seemed to hold a promise, of dreams pursued, of love embraced, of stories yet to be told. The phoenix on Gail's chest was hidden now beneath his shirt, but Harper could feel its presence, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful transformations came from the courage to let old ways burn away. She thought of her own tattoo, the words that had carried her through so many challenges. "Still I rise." Rising, she was learning, didn't always mean climbing higher. Sometimes it meant reaching wider, letting your heart expand to hold more than you thought possible. Sometimes it meant trusting that when you opened your arms, the right people would be there to catch you. And sometimes it meant simply sitting at a dinner table with the people you loved, watching the future unfold one precious moment at a time. 3 months after the fire, Riverside High's gymnasium reopened. Harper stood at the entrance, watching students file in for the first assembly of the new school year. Sunlight streamed through the reinforced skylights, Gail's addition to the renovation plans, creating patterns that danced across the newly finished floor. "Ready for this?" Principal Walsh asked, joining her at the doors. Harper touched the small portfolio in her hands, containing her first district-wide curriculum presentation. As ready as I'll ever be. Inside, the bleachers filled with students, their excitement palpable. The gym still smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. In the front row, Harper spotted Miguel, now a senior, wearing a t-shirt with "the future teacher" printed across the front. He caught her eye and grinned, giving her a thumbs up. The assembly wasn't just about the gym's reopening, it was about transformation, of spaces, of systems, of people. Dr. Reynolds had insisted that Harper's new curriculum initiative be announced here, where everything had nearly ended and begun again. As Walsh stepped up to the microphone to begin the proceedings, Harper felt a familiar presence beside her. Gale, off-duty but still carrying the quiet authority of his profession, slipped his hand into hers. "Nervous," he whispered. "Terrified," she admitted. "But the good kind, like watching your sister board a plane to California?" Harper's heart tightened at the memory of yesterday's airport goodbye. Imani had been radiant with excitement, her carry-on stuffed with camera equipment and dreams. Their final hug had felt different, not an ending but a transformation of its own. "Miss Lane," Walsh's voice brought her back to the present. "Would you like to share your vision with us?" Walking to the podium, Harper looked out at the sea of faces. These weren't just students anymore. They were story carriers, truth-tellers, future leaders waiting to rise. 3 months ago," she began, her voice steady, "this gym nearly burned down. But what could have been an ending became something else, a reminder that sometimes we need to let old systems burn away, so new ones can grow." She outlined her initiative, a curriculum that would bring diverse voices into every classroom, that would teach students not just to read stories but to recognize their power to create change. "Literature isn't just about what's written in books," she continued. "It's about the stories we live, the truths we dare to tell, the changes we're brave enough to make." As she spoke, she saw heads nodding, phones lowering as students leaned forward to listen. In the back, she spotted Gale talking quietly with a group of students, the ones who'd been trapped in the locker room during the fire. He'd been working with them on trauma recovery, turning fear into understanding. The presentation ended to genuine applause. As students began filing out for their first classes, Miguel approached the podium. "Ms. Lane, I applied to the teaching program at State." He shifted nervously. Would you write my recommendation?" Harper smiled, remembering his words during the investigation. "Your class is the only one where I feel like I can be myself." "I'd be honored," she said. "I just promise me one thing. When you have your own classroom, remember that teaching isn't just about the lessons. It's about creating space for truth to grow." After the gym cleared, Gale found her collecting her materials. "That was incredible," he said, helping her gather the papers. "So though I'm not sure if you were talking about literature or life, maybe they're the same thing." She looked up at him, at the man who'd helped her remember that strength could mean letting someone else carry part of the weight. "Have you checked your phone?" "Just saw it." He pulled out his phone, showing Imani's text, a selfie in front of her dorm room, caption reading, "First day of the rest of our story. Miss you both already." "She's going to be amazing," Harper said softly. "She already is." Gale tucked his phone away. Like her sister, they walked together through the rebuilt gymnasium, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Near the door, Harper paused, remembering the smoke and fear of that morning 3 months ago. "You know what I think about standing here?" she asked. "What?" "That night at the party. The stuck zipper." She turned to face him fully. "How sometimes the smallest moments can change everything." Gale's hand found the small of her back, exactly where it had been that first night. "Speaking of changes," he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small key. "Move in with me." Harper's breath caught. "What?" "The house I've been looking at, the one near the station. I got approved." His eyes held hers, serious but hopeful. "Say, it has a great study for your curriculum work, plenty of room for when Imani visits and—" He smiled slightly. "No tricky zippers." Harper felt tears threatening but didn't try to hide them. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." His free hand came up to cup her cheek. "What do you say, partner? Ready to start our next chapter?" Looking at the key in his hand, Harper thought about all the doors that had closed and opened in the past few months. about how sometimes the scariest steps led to the most beautiful destinations. Yes, she said simply, taking the key. Yes, to all of it. Their kiss was interrupted by Harper's phone buzzing, another text from Imani, this one a video. They watched together as her face filled the screen, her new dorm room visible behind her. "Hey, sis. Hey, future brother-in-law." She grinned. "Just wanted to say I love you both, and I already started writing our story." Working title, Between the Zipper and the Flame, A Tale of Love, Truth and Rising. She winked. "Too much?" "Perfect," Harper whispered, though the video had ended. "Absolutely perfect." They left the gym hand in hand, stepping into the bright Atlanta morning. Students rushed past them to classes, teachers called out greetings, and somewhere in the distance, a fire truck's siren wailed, all the ordinary sounds of a world continuing to turn. But nothing felt ordinary anymore, not since that night when a stuck zipper led to a touch led to a connection, and a connection led to a love story neither of them had seen coming. Harper squeezed Gail's hand, feeling the weight of the key in her pocket. Above them, through the new skylights, sunlight painted everything in shades of possibility. They had a home to build, stories to tell, lives to intertwine. They had a future stretching out before them, bright and open and full of promise. And they had each other, partners in every sense of the word, ready to face whatever flames or fate might bring, knowing that the strongest fires were the ones that burned in their own hearts, lighting the way forward, together. 1 year later, the California sunset painted the beach in shades of orange and gold as Imani adjusted her camera one final time. Behind her, wedding guests mingled on the sand, their formal attire softened by the casual beauty of the oceanside setting. "Perfect lighting," she murmured, checking the frame. Her first professional wedding video, though the clients were admittedly biased. Near the water's edge, Harper stood with Gail, both barefoot in the sand. Her white dress was simple but elegant, with a zipper that hadn't given her any trouble, though Gail had joked about being ready just in case. His firefighter's dress uniform had been exchanged for a light linen suit that caught the breeze off the ocean. Dr. Reynolds had made the trip from Atlanta to officiate, her presence a reminder of how much had changed in a year. Miguel, now in his first semester of teaching school, sat in the front row beside Principal Walsh. Several of Gail's fellow firefighters from Station 23 had flown in, their presence a testament to the family they'd all built together. "Ready?" Imani called out, giving her sister a thumbs up. Harper smiled, squeezing Gail's hand. The "Still I Rise" tattoo on her arm had been joined by a small flame design that matched the phoenix on his chest, their private symbol of transformation. As the ceremony began, Imani's camera captured more than just images. It captured moments. The way Gail's hands trembled slightly as he placed the ring on Harper's finger, the proud tears in Dr. Reynolds' eyes as she pronounced them married, the look of pure joy on Harper's face as she kissed her husband for the first time. But most importantly, it captured the story of a family rebuilt from ashes, of love that grew stronger through trials, of truth that refused to be silenced. As the sun set on the California coast, their flames burned eternal, lighting the way home, wherever home might be. Some stories end. The best ones transform. The end. Based on this moving story about love, transformation and courage, I'd like to ask a profound question for reflection. In Between the Zipper and the Flame, Harper had to learn that true strength doesn't mean carrying everything alone, but rather having the courage to let someone into your life. What was the moment in your life when you realized that being strong didn't mean being lonely? Was it an easy or difficult lesson to learn? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.